You're losing people, and your mouth is the reason. Not because you're lying, not because you're rude, because of small, quiet things you say every single day. Things that feel normal, feel polite, feel safe, and they're slowly telling everyone around you exactly how to handle you. And you have no idea it's happening. Machiavelli figured this out centuries before psychology had a name for it. He didn't care about big dramatic betrayals, he cared about the small ones, the slow leaks, the words that chip away at your position so gradually that by the time you notice, the damage is already done. So let's go through them, one by one. The first one is so common it's almost invisible. Over-explaining. Someone asks you something simple, routine, no pressure, and you answer and then keep going. You add context nobody asked for. You justify decisions that weren't even questioned. You explain your reasoning like the conversation is a courtroom and you're already on the stand. You weren't being questioned, but you just put yourself under oath. Here's what over-explaining signals, not to you but to them. Guilt or uncertainty or a need for their approval. It doesn't matter which one is true. On the receiving end, all three look identical. And once that's visible, it becomes leverage. You've done this recently. You answered, kept talking, watched their expression shift slightly, kept talking more to correct it, and somehow the more you said, the worse it felt. That's not communication. That's confession. Now get more specific, because it's not just that you over-explain, it's the exact words you use when you do. I just wanted to, I was just trying to, I only meant to, that word. Just. 4 letters, and every time it shows up, it does one thing. It miniaturizes you before anyone else can. You shrink yourself preemptively, like if you make yourself small enough first, nobody can cut you down further. That's not humility. That's a defense mechanism wearing humility's face. And the people hearing it, they don't register modesty, they register an opening. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. These patterns didn't come from nowhere. They formed when you needed them, probably around someone who required careful handling, someone whose reaction you had to manage before it even arrived. So you learned to soften everything, to pre-explain, to frame your own needs as a small, almost apologetic thing. It worked then. It kept things calm. But you carried those patterns into completely different rooms, rooms where nobody is threatening you. Negotiations, new relationships, conversations with people who were never going to attack you, but your words were telling them to expect weakness anyway. Your language set the terms, not their assumptions, yours, and that's the part that stings, because it means the problem isn't them. Third one, the apology reflex. And this one is sneaky because it hides behind politeness, not a real apology. Those are fine. This is the apology that arrives before anything has even happened. Sorry to bother you, but I don't want to be a pain, but I know you're busy, but you're apologizing before you've asked the question, shrinking before they've even responded, handing them authority over the interaction before it begins. And here's exactly what that does to them. It signals that your request is already a burden, so they treat it like one. You didn't ask for that dynamic, you built it, with a 4-word opener before you even got to the point. Machiavelli put it plainly. A person who constantly seeks forgiveness is advertising that they expect to need it. And once you expect to need it, you start unconsciously creating the situations that require it. The loop runs itself. Fourth one. This one is the quietest and probably the most damaging, constant hedging. I might be wrong, but take this with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion. So there's a version of this that's real intellectual humility. That version is useful and earned, but most of the time, be honest, it's not humility, it's preemptive rejection management. You're softening your own point before they respond, so that if they push back, the landing is already cushioned. You absorbed their disagreement for them in advance before they even formed one. What that tells them, you don't fully believe what you're about to say. So why would they? The idea didn't fail them. You disqualified it before it had a chance to land. Pause here for a second. Have you recognized yourself yet in any of this? Because if you have, notice what just happened. Did you sit with it? Or did you immediately think of someone else who does this more, or worse, or more obviously than you do? Did you find the exception that makes your version okay? That move, that deflection, is also a pattern, just a quieter one. And it's doing the same thing the other patterns do, protecting you from the discomfort of a clear look. Here's the darker layer. The one most people don't want to think about. The people who benefit most from your verbal tells aren't strangers. They're the people who've been around you long enough to map them. They know when you say it's fine, it isn't. They know when you start over-explaining, you can be pushed further. They know your hedge means your position isn't solid. They've been calibrating, adjusting. probably not even consciously, but your language has been a manual this whole time, updated daily, written by you, handed to them for free, and they've been reading it longer than you'd like to admit. This is where Machiavelli becomes relevant in a way most people miss. He didn't write about domination through aggression. He wrote about positioning, about the quiet architecture of how power moves through conversation. The person who speaks with precision, who says what they mean, nothing more, and then waits, controls the temperature of the room. Not because they're loud or aggressive, because they create no openings, nothing to grab onto, nothing to read into. And you've met this person. You've felt it. They say one sentence. You respond with four. They wait. You fill the silence. And somewhere in that exchange, without a single aggressive move, the dynamic shifted and you handed it over, word by word. That's not dominance they took. That's positioning you gave up. So what's the actual trap? The trap is recognizing every single pattern in this video, nodding along, understanding it completely, and still using all of them tomorrow. Because these aren't just habits, they're attached to a belief, a very specific, quiet fear. What if I stop explaining and they misunderstand me? What if I stop apologizing first and they get offended? What if I say exactly what I mean and they reject it? That feels like caution, feels like social intelligence. It's not. It's the trap. Because in trying to prevent rejection, you guarantee a slower version of it. The version where people gradually stop taking you seriously without being able to say exactly why. Where your words have trained the people around you to expect less from you, to push back more on you, to handle you a certain way, and none of them even made a conscious decision to do it. You wrote the instructions. They just followed them. Here's the last thing. You already know which of these you do. You recognized at least one, probably more, somewhere in it. And the real question isn't how do I speak differently, because that's just technique, and technique doesn't fix the root. The real question is, what exactly are you afraid will happen if you stop? Because that fear is what's driving the words. The over-explaining, the pre-apologies, the hedging, the miniaturizing, all of it is that one fear in different costumes. And until you look directly at the fear, the costumes just keep changing. Machiavelli wasn't cold. He wasn't ruthless. He was just honest about one thing most people refuse to accept. How you're perceived is a currency. And every time you open your mouth, you're either spending it or building it. You've been spending it on things you don't even want. Reassurance, preemptive safety, approval from people who weren't even questioning you. And the account is closer to empty than you think. So the question isn't whether your words are betraying you. They are. The question is, what are you going to do the next time you feel the urge to say, I just wanted to? Are you going to catch it? Or are you going to keep talking? Word count sits right in range. Let me know if you want the hook sharper, the ending darker, or any section punched up.